I always thought my Grandma Aurora was an open book, bound in sunshine and laughter. Her blue eyes, the color of a summer sky just after a rain, always seemed to hold a knowing twinkle, a silent promise of comfort. Even her wrinkles, etched deep by the years, seemed like little pathways of joy, each one a testament to a life well lived. A life I thought I knew everything about. Growing up, her house was my sanctuary. The scent of cinnamon and old books always hung in the air, a comforting blend that wrapped around you like a warm hug. The creaking floorboards told tales of generations past, whispering secrets only those who listened closely could hear. And Aurora, my Aurora, was the heart of it all. She was the one who bandaged my scraped knees, who taught me how to bake apple pies with a perfectly golden crust, who held my hand during thunderstorms and told me stories until the fear subsided. She was my safe harbor, my guiding star, the unwavering constant in a world that often felt chaotic and overwhelming. She always had time for me, a bottomless well of patience and understanding. I could tell her anything, confide in her about my silliest crushes, my biggest fears, my wildest dreams. She never judged, never scolded, never dismissed my feelings as trivial. Instead, she listened, truly listened, with those bright blue eyes fixed on mine, and offered her gentle wisdom, her unwavering support. She made me feel seen, heard, valued. She made me feel loved. And when the time came, as it always does, when her body began to fail, when the laughter lines deepened into trenches of weariness, and the twinkle in her eyes dimmed with the encroaching shadows of age, my family and I faced a difficult decision. The thought of putting her in a nursing home, of entrusting her care to strangers, felt like a betrayal. But we were all working, raising families of our own, and we simply couldn't provide the constant care she needed. It was a painful, agonizing choice, one that haunted my dreams for weeks. We talked about it with her, of course. We explained our predicament, our love, our guilt. And Aurora, ever the pragmatist, surprised us all. She didn't want to be a burden, she said. She understood. But she also made it clear that she wouldn't go without a fight. She would try, she promised, to make things as easy as possible. And she did. She participated in her care, she remained cheerful and optimistic, she even made friends with some of the staff at the nursing home. But beneath the surface, I could sense a quiet sadness, a longing for the independence she was slowly losing. I visited her as often as I could, bringing her flowers, reading her books, just sitting with her in comfortable silence, holding her hand. I tried to fill the void, to ease her loneliness, but I knew it wasn't enough. Then one day she was gone. She slipped away peacefully in her sleep, a gentle sigh escaping her lips as she drifted into eternity. The grief was a tidal wave washing over me, leaving me gasping for air. The world felt dimmer, colder, emptier without her light. After the funeral, after the condolences and the tearful embraces, came the task of sorting through her belongings. It was a daunting task, a bittersweet journey through a lifetime of memories. Each object, each photograph, each faded letter held a story, a piece of her soul. And as I sifted through the contents of her home, I felt her presence all around me, a comforting warmth that eased the ache in my heart. It was in the attic, tucked away in a dusty corner, that I found it. An old wooden box, its surface scarred and weathered, its brass hinges tarnished with age. The wood felt smooth beneath my fingertips, worn smooth by years of handling. It was locked, but the lock was old and brittle, and with a gentle pressure it snapped open. Inside, nestled among yellowed lace and faded photographs, was a diary. Not a pristine store-bought diary with lined pages and a fancy cover, but a simple, unassuming notebook, bound in worn leather. The leather was cracked and dry, but it still retained a faint earthy scent, a scent that transported me back to Aurora's house, to the comforting aroma of cinnamon and old books. My hands trembled as I lifted it from the box. The pages were filled with her handwriting, a delicate, flowing script that I recognized instantly. The ink was faded, almost brown in places, but the words were still legible. As I opened the diary, a wave of emotion washed over me, a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and a profound sense of reverence. The first entry was dated 1942. My breath caught in my throat. 1942. A year of war, of uncertainty, of unimaginable hardship. What secrets could this diary hold? What stories had Aurora kept hidden beneath her cheerful facade? I began to read slowly, carefully, absorbing each word, each sentence, each paragraph. And as I read, the image I had of my Grandma Aurora, the open book I thought I knew so well, began to crumble. The woman who emerged from the pages of the diary was a woman I had never known. A woman of courage, of passion, of unwavering strength. A woman who had lived a life far more complex, far more dramatic, than I could have ever imagined. The diary revealed a forbidden love. A love that blossomed amidst the chaos and destruction of war. It spoke of sacrifices made, of secrets kept, of a legacy that echoed across generations. It told of a young woman, torn between duty and desire, forced to make impossible choices, her heart breaking with every decision. It spoke of wartime resistance, hidden identities, and acts of bravery that defied belief. My hands shook as I devoured the pages, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt as though I were intruding on something sacred, something deeply personal. But I couldn't stop reading. I had to know the truth. I had to understand the woman who had shaped my life, the woman who had always been my guiding star. The diary was more than just a collection of words on paper. It was a window into her soul, a glimpse into the hidden depths of her being. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the secrets that bind families together across time. I closed the diary, my eyes filled with tears. The weight of her story pressed down on me, a heavy burden of responsibility. I knew that I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to share it. I had to honor her memory. I had to ensure that her story was never forgotten. The discovery of Aurora's hidden diary wasn't just the unveiling of a secret. It was the beginning of something profound. It was the unlocking of a legacy, the opening of a door to a past I never knew existed. It was a journey into the heart of my family, a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, about my heritage, about the woman I loved more than anyone in the world. If you'd like to keep me company as we explore these memories, please subscribe and stay close. I promise it's a story you won't soon forget. And I have a feeling Grandma Aurora wouldn't have wanted it any other way. The scent of dried lavender still clung to the pages, a ghost of summers long past. As I turned them, the spidery handwriting seemed to soften, the ink bleeding into the paper like watercolors left out in the rain. It was Aurora's hand, undeniably hers. But the words, they painted a picture so different from the woman I thought I knew, the woman who'd faced down the world with a stubborn smile. This wasn't the granite-strong matriarch. This was something else, something younger. Willow Creek. Just the name itself tasted of honeysuckle and sun-warmed dust. It wasn't a grand place, not by any stretch. Just a scattering of houses nestled amongst rolling hills, a single church spire pointing a hopeful finger towards the heavens, and the ever-present whisper of the creek that gave the town its name. This was the late 1930s, and the world outside felt a million miles away, a world of distant rumblings and anxieties we barely understood. Here life moved at the pace of the seasons, a slow, steady rhythm that lulled you into a sense of profound peace. Our farm, a modest spread carved out of the land by generations of hard work, sat on the edge of town. Fields of corn stretched out like golden oceans, their tassels swaying in the breeze. The air hummed with the buzz of bees and the chirping of crickets, a symphony of summer that filled my childhood. The house itself was a simple, sturdy structure, built of wood and love. Its walls held the echoes of laughter, the comfort of shared meals, and the quiet murmur of bedtime stories. I was Aurora then, a girl of perhaps 10 or 11, with a tangle of brown hair that perpetually escaped its braids and eyes the color of the summer sky after a thunderstorm. I wasn't particularly pretty, nor particularly clever. I was just observant. I saw things, felt things with a keenness that sometimes overwhelmed me. The way the sunlight filtered through the leaves of the old oak tree in our yard, dappling the ground in shifting patterns. The mournful cry of a hawk circling overhead. The subtle shift in my mother's expression when she worried about the crops. These things, these small, seemingly insignificant details, filled my world with a richness that I couldn't quite articulate. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor, were farmers through and through. Their hands were calloused and weathered, their faces etched with the lines of sun and wind. But their hearts were as vast and fertile as the land they tended. They were simple people, not given to grand pronouncements or displays of affection. But their love was woven into the fabric of our lives, as strong and enduring as the earth itself. My father, a quiet, stoic man, taught me the secrets of the land. He showed me how to read the clouds, how to feel the pulse of the earth beneath my bare feet, How to coax life from the smallest seed. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. I remember him spending hours mending fences in the sweltering heat, his brow furrowed in concentration, his lips moving in silent prayer. He believed in hard work, in honesty, and in the power of the land to provide. My mother, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy. She was the heart of our home, the keeper of our traditions, the mender of our spirits. Her hands were never still. She was always baking bread, sewing clothes, tending to the garden, or nursing a sick animal back to health. She had a voice that could soothe a crying baby or command a stubborn mule. And her laughter, it was like sunshine breaking through the clouds. Then there was Thomas, my older brother, a dreamer with his head always in the clouds, quite literally. He was obsessed with airplanes, with the idea of soaring above the earth, of escaping the confines of our small town. He spent hours poring over books and magazines, sketching designs in his notebook, and building model airplanes out of scraps of wood and wire. He talked of becoming a pilot, of seeing the world from a bird's eye view. My parents, bless their practical souls, indulged his fantasies, even though they couldn't quite understand them. They knew that his dreams were what kept him going, what gave him hope. And Lily, my younger sister, was a creature of pure poetry. She saw beauty in everything, in the dewdrop clinging to a spiderweb, in the flight of a butterfly, in the colors of the sunset. She had a way with words, a gift for weaving stories that could transport you to another world. She filled notebooks with her poems and drawings, her imagination overflowing like a spring after a long winter. She was a fragile, ethereal being, a delicate flower blooming in the rough and tumble world of our farm. Our days were filled with the rhythms of farm life. We woke before dawn, the roosters crow our alarm clock, and headed out to the fields to tend to the crops. We hoed weeds, watered plants, and harvested vegetables, our hands working in unison, our bodies moving with the slow, deliberate grace of those who are intimately connected to the land. In the evenings, we gathered around the dinner table, our faces illuminated by the warm glow of the kerosene lamp. We ate simple, hearty meals, my mother's cooking a testament to her love and resourcefulness. We talked about our day, sharing our joys and our sorrows, our hopes and our fears. Sometimes after dinner we would sit on the porch and watch the stars come out, a million tiny diamonds scattered across the velvet sky. My father would point out the constellations, telling us stories of ancient heroes and mythical creatures. Thomas would talk about his dreams of flying, his voice filled with passion and wonder. Lily would recite her poems, her words painting vivid pictures in our minds. And I would simply listen, absorbing the sounds and the sights, the feeling of being surrounded by my family, safe and loved. But even in the midst of this idyllic existence, a quiet restlessness stirred within me. I felt a yearning for something more, something I couldn't quite name. I devoured books, escaping into worlds beyond Willow Creek, worlds of adventure and romance, of kings and queens, of faraway lands and exotic cultures. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing the world, of experiencing all that life had to offer. I knew deep down that Willow Creek, as beautiful and comforting as it was, wasn't the end of my story. I would often wander down to the creek, the namesake of our little town, and sit beneath the weeping willow trees that lined its banks. The water gurgled and chuckled as it flowed over the smooth stones, carrying secrets and stories from places unknown. I would dip my toes in the cool water, watching the minnows dart between the rocks, imagining myself as one of them, free to swim wherever the current took me. I would close my eyes and listen to the wind whispering through the willow branches, its voice a haunting melody that both soothed and stirred my soul. There was a world out there, I knew it. A world of possibilities, of challenges, of triumphs and heartbreaks. And I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't know how or when or even if it would ever happen. But the longing was there. A constant undercurrent beneath the surface of my seemingly peaceful life. A quiet, persistent hum that vibrated in my very bones. It wasn't unhappiness, not exactly. More like anticipation. Like waiting for a storm to break. A storm that you knew would change everything. And perhaps looking back, that's what it was. A storm brewing on the horizon. A storm that would eventually engulf Willow Creek and sweep us all away, scattering us to the four winds. But for now, in those last few years of innocence, we lived in a bubble of peace, unaware of the darkness that was gathering on the edges of the world, a darkness that would soon shatter our idyllic existence forever. The diary page felt warm against my fingers, almost alive with the memory. A memory of a girl, a family, a town, and a world on the cusp of unimaginable change. The lavender scent seemed to intensify, a poignant reminder of a time that was gone, but not forgotten. Here's the story. Willow Creek held onto its peace like a stubborn weed clinging to cracked pavement. Even as the radio crackled with news of faraway lands consumed by war, life in our little corner of the world moved with the familiar rhythm of the seasons. The scent of honeysuckle still drifted on the breeze, the fireflies still winked in the twilight, and the gossip at Mrs. Abernathy's general store still revolved around who was courting whom. But even a blind woman could sense the shift. It began subtly. A furrow in Pa's brow deepened as he listened to President Roosevelt's speeches. Ma, who usually hummed while she kneaded bread, grew quieter, her hands moving with a frantic energy. The letters from Uncle Samuel, stationed in some place called Pearl Harbor, became less frequent, the cheerful tone strained. He wrote of drills, of tension, of a feeling like a storm gathering on the horizon. We'd huddle around the radio, my little brother Billy, clinging to my skirt, Ma's hand gripping Pa's, listening to the scratchy voices broadcasting from Europe. Names like Poland and France became whispered anxieties in our home. Thomas, ever the dreamer, saw it all as a grand adventure waiting to unfold. He devoured newspaper articles, his eyes shining with a feverish excitement. He spoke of joining the army, of fighting for freedom, of proving himself a hero. Pa would sigh and ruffle his hair, telling him he was too young, but I saw a flicker of something akin to pride in his eyes. Thomas, bless his heart, was always chasing after glory, while I was just trying to understand what was happening to the world. Ma, on the other hand, was consumed by a quiet terror. She'd lost her eldest brother to the Spanish flu years ago, and the thought of her sons facing such a threat again haunted her waking hours. I'd find her late at night, hunched over her sewing, her lips moving in silent prayer. She started hoarding sugar and flour, whispering about the need to be prepared. I tried to reassure her, but a knot of dread had taken root in my own stomach. Before, my restlessness had been the yearning of a young woman dreaming of romance and adventure. Now it felt like something darker, a sense of impending doom that settled over Willow Creek like a shroud. The world I knew, the world of simple joys and predictable routines, was cracking, and I felt helpless to stop it. I started spending more time alone, walking by the creek, trying to find solace in the familiar murmur of the water. But even the creek seemed to echo the unease that permeated everything. Then he arrived. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the air hung heavy and still, pregnant with the promise of a late summer storm. I was sketching in my notebook by the old oak tree near the creek, trying to capture the way the sunlight dappled through the leaves. That's when I saw him. He was standing by the edge of the woods, half hidden in the shadows, as if he'd materialized from the trees themselves. He wore a uniform, but it was different from the ones I'd seen in the newspapers. It was a darker green, almost the color of moss, and the cut was unfamiliar. He was young, no older than Thomas, but there was an air of weariness about him that belied his age. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held a depth that both intrigued and frightened me. The local boys, they swaggered and boasted, their eyes full of youthful bravado. They were loud and clumsy, their laughter echoing across the fields. But this young man, he stood with a quiet stillness, his shoulders squared, his gaze steady. There was a contained power in his posture, a sense of someone who knew more than he let on. He didn't smile, didn't offer a greeting. He simply stood there watching me, his presence radiating a strange intensity. I felt a flush rise in my cheeks, a nervous flutter in my chest. I lowered my notebook, my hand trembling slightly. "Can I help you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. He took a step forward, emerging from the shadows. The sunlight caught his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. He was even more striking up close. "I'm looking for the Miller farm," he said, his voice low and gravelly, with a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. It wasn't the drawl of Willow Creek, nor the clipped tones of the city folk who sometimes came to visit. It was something else. "That's just down the road," I said, pointing in the direction of our house. "About a mile or so. You can't miss it." He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. It felt like he was trying to see something hidden beneath my skin, something I didn't even know was there. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. He turned to leave, then hesitated, looking back at me. "I'm Elias," he added, as if compelled to offer something more. "Aurora," I replied, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. He nodded again, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Then he turned and disappeared into the woods, leaving me standing there, breathless and confused. I watched him go, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was he? Where did he come from? And why did his presence make me feel like the world was about to tilt on its axis? That evening, Pa confirmed what I already suspected. The government, he explained, was quietly placing soldiers in rural communities, young men tasked with, well, he didn't say exactly what. Protection, he implied. Preparedness. But I saw the worry in his eyes, the way he avoided looking directly at me. Elias was staying with the Abernathy's, in the room above the general store. I saw him a few times in the following days, always from a distance. He'd be walking through town, his face a mask of stoicism, or helping Mrs. Abernathy carry groceries. He never spoke to anyone, never smiled. He was an enigma, a silent observer in our small, predictable world. I found myself drawn to him, despite the unease he inspired. I'd catch myself watching him, wondering about his past, about the secrets he carried in his eyes. He was different from the boys I knew, different from anyone I'd ever met. He was a shadow in the sunshine, a whisper in the silence. One evening I was walking home from the library, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. As I rounded the corner by the church, I saw him leaning against the stone wall, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He looked lost. I hesitated, unsure whether to approach him. But something compelled me forward, a curiosity I couldn't resist. "Elias," I said softly. He turned, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. He seemed to relax a fraction when he saw it was me. "Aurora," he said, his voice still low and gravelly. "What are you doing here?" I asked, feeling foolish the moment the words left my mouth. He shrugged, his gaze drifting back to the horizon. "Just thinking," he said. We stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the chirping of crickets in the nearby fields. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with a tension that crackled between us like static electricity. "The war," I began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. He nodded slowly. "It's coming," he said, his voice barely audible. "It's coming for all of us." His words sent a chill down my spine. I knew he was right. The war was no longer a distant rumble. It was a storm gathering on our doorstep, and Elias was the harbinger of its arrival. Are you here to protect us?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He looked at me then, his eyes filled with a sadness that made my heart ache. "Protection is an illusion, Aurora," he said softly. "All we can do is try to survive." His words were bleak, devoid of hope, but there was something in his gaze, something that hinted at a hidden strength, a resilience forged in the fires of experience. I knew then that Elias was more than just a soldier. He was a survivor, and his arrival in Willow Creek was about to change everything. The scent of honeysuckle was still there. Yes, but now underneath was the metallic tang of something dangerous, something unknown. And I, Aurora Miller, was caught right in the middle. My quiet life, my simple dreams were about to be swept away by the tide of history, a tide that carried with it the promise of both heartbreak and awakening. The world was changing, and so was I. And Elias, with his secrets and his haunted eyes, was the catalyst. The scent of wood smoke and damp earth still clings to my memory, a constant reminder of those stolen moments with Elias. We met in the hush of twilight, near the whispering willows down by the creek, where the shadows danced like secrets shared. The world outside Willow Creek was darkening, a storm gathering on the horizon, but in those brief encounters, there was a flicker of light, a fragile hope that bloomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. He was different, Elias. Not just because he spoke with a slight accent, a German inflection that he tried to mask, but because of the sadness in his eyes, a deep weariness that belied his youthful face. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, a haunted grace that drew me in despite the wariness I felt. We talked about everything and nothing, the simple joys of a summer day. the weight of the world's troubles, the dreams we held close to our hearts. I found myself confiding in him things I hadn't even admitted to myself, secrets I buried deep within my soul. He listened with a gentle attentiveness, his gaze unwavering, making me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. One evening, the air thick with the scent of approaching rain, Elias finally told me his truth. He wasn't simply a traveler passing through. He was a scientist, a physicist who had deserted the German army. His voice was barely a whisper as he confessed, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. He'd been working on a project, a terrible weapon he couldn't bear to contribute to. So he ran carrying with him a piece of knowledge, a key to something far more important, something he believed could prevent unimaginable destruction. He spoke of an encryption device, an artifact of immense power, capable of scrambling communications and safeguarding crucial information. His mentor, a brilliant clockmaker before the war, had entrusted him with the task of finding it before it fell into the wrong hands, specifically the Nazis. They were searching for it, Elias explained, and he was certain they were getting closer. He believed it was hidden somewhere nearby, concealed long ago by a secret society his mentor had been a part of. The weight of his words settled upon me, heavy and suffocating. I knew the risks, the dangers involved in harboring a deserter, in getting involved with something so deeply entangled in the war. But looking into his desperate eyes, seeing the genuine fear and the unwavering conviction in his voice, I couldn't turn away. My heart, so long dormant, had awakened, and with it came a fierce protectiveness, a need to shield him from the darkness that threatened to engulf us all. As the days turned into weeks, a chilling unease settled over Willow Creek. Strangers arrived, men with hard eyes and stiff demeanors, asking questions about newcomers, about German speakers. They moved with a quiet purpose, their presence casting a long shadow over our peaceful town. I saw them watching me, watching Elias, their gazes lingering a moment too long, a subtle threat hanging in the air. The whispers started, suspicion breeding in the fertile ground of fear. It was like the war had finally come home, creeping into our lives, poisoning the very air we breathed. Elias became increasingly frantic, poring over his mentor's cryptic notes, searching for any clue that could lead him to the artifact. He spoke of riddles hidden within clockwork mechanisms, of symbols and codes embedded in the intricate designs. He believed the clockmaker had left a trail, a map hidden in plain sight, for someone who knew how to read it. One afternoon, while Elias was deciphering a particularly complex passage, I remembered something my grandfather had told me about the old church. He'd spoken of secret passages, of a labyrinthine network of tunnels beneath the building, used centuries ago during times of religious persecution. He dismissed it as folklore, an old wives' tale, but now, remembering the glint in his eye as he told the story, I wondered if there was more to it than legend. I told Elias about my grandfather's stories, and a spark ignited in his eyes. He believed it was the key, the missing piece of the puzzle. That night, under the cloak of darkness, we ventured into the old church. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and decay, the silence broken only by the creaking of the floorboards under our feet. We found a hidden entrance behind the altar, a narrow passage leading down into the darkness. As we descended into the labyrinth, the weight of the past pressed down on us. The tunnels were damp and claustrophobic, the air heavy with the smell of mildew and forgotten secrets. We navigated the maze, guided by Elias's knowledge of the clockmaker's codes and my vague recollections of my grandfather's stories. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached a small hidden chamber. In the center of the room, resting on a pedestal, was a beautifully crafted clockwork box. It was intricately designed, adorned with symbols and gears, a testament to the clockmaker's genius. Elias approached it with reverence, his hands trembling as he carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was the encryption device, a small, unassuming object that held the power to change the course of the war. But our triumph was short-lived. As we emerged from the labyrinth, we were met by a group of men, their faces grim, their weapons drawn. They were Nazis disguised as civilians, their true identities betrayed by the coldness in their eyes. They had been watching us, waiting for us to lead them to the artifact. In that moment, standing between the man I loved and the safety of my family, I faced a choice. I could surrender, protect my loved ones from harm, Or I could fight, risk everything to protect the artifact and the hope it represented. My heart pounded in my chest, fear warring with the newfound courage. I looked at Elias, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination, and I knew what I had to do. I had always been a quiet observer, a woman content to live within the confines of her small world. But the war had changed me, had awakened something within me, a strength I never knew I possessed. I was no longer just Grandma Aurora, the woman who baked pies and tended her garden. I was a protector, a guardian of hope, and I would do whatever it took to protect those I loved, even if it meant risking everything. I pulled out the small pistol my grandfather had given me years ago, a relic of a bygone era. It felt heavy in my hand, a symbol of the responsibility I now carried. I aimed it at the Nazis, my hands shaking but my voice firm. "You will not take this," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. "This belongs to the world, not to you." That night, as I wrote in my diary, the words flowed from me like a torrent. I wrote of my fear, my love for Elias, my growing sense of purpose. I wrote of the woman I was becoming, a woman forged in the fires of war, a woman who was finally ready to fight for what she believed in. The diary had become my confidant, my sanctuary, a place where I could pour out my heart and find solace in the midst of chaos. It was a testament to my journey, a record of my transformation from a passive observer to an active participant in the unfolding drama of history. And as I closed its cover, I knew that my story was far from over. It was just beginning. The air in the hidden chamber hung thick and cold, a dampness that seeped into my bones despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Elias held the lantern high, its beam dancing across walls lined with gears, cogs, and half-finished clockwork contraptions. It was like stepping into the mind of his mentor, the clockmaker, a mind obsessed with time and secrets. The air smelled of oil and dust, a scent that spoke of decades undisturbed. We had finally found it, the entrance hidden behind a loose stone panel that responded to a specific sequence of chimes, a melody Elias had painstakingly deciphered from the clockmaker's notes. The lock itself was a marvel, a miniature orrery that required the precise alignment of planets to release its hold. Elias, his brow furrowed in concentration, had manipulated the tiny spheres with a surgeon's touch. Now, bathed in the lantern's glow, stood a heavy oak chest, its surface intricately carved with symbols I didn't understand but felt in my very core. It radiated a sense of immense age, of something profoundly important held carefully within. Elias placed a hand on the chest, his fingers tracing the strange carvings. "It's here, Aurora. After all this time, after all the everything." His voice was hushed, reverent. He looked at me, his eyes shining with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. "Ready?" I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was ready. I had to be. Elias took a deep breath and slowly lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a small, intricately crafted box made of a dark, unfamiliar metal. It pulsed with a faint, internal light, a subtle thrumming that vibrated through the very floor beneath our feet. Before we could even truly take it in, a crash echoed from the tunnel behind us. A shout, sharp and guttural, followed. "They found us!" I cried, fear lancing through me. Elias slammed the chest shut. "We have to go. Now!" He grabbed my hand and we plunged back into the labyrinthine tunnels, the lantern swinging wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced around us like mocking spirits. The sounds of our pursuers' heavy boots on stone, harsh German commands grew closer, relentless. Elias led the way, his knowledge of the tunnels our only advantage. He moved with a desperate urgency, navigating the maze with a speed that belied the treacherous terrain. I struggled to keep up, my lungs burning, my legs aching. We rounded a corner and found ourselves in a narrow passage, barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber, but the way was blocked by a heavy iron gate. Elias fumbled with the lock, his fingers trembling. "Hurry," I urged, glancing back down the tunnel, the sounds of our pursuers closing in. The lock clicked open and Elias shoved the gate aside. We scrambled through, but as I turned to follow, I saw them. Two figures, clad in the black uniforms of the SS, burst into the passage, their faces grim and determined. "Halt!" one of them barked, raising his pistol. Elias shoved me forward. "Go, Aurora. Get out of here." I'll hold them off. No. I won't leave you. I screamed, tears welling in my eyes. You have to. This is bigger than us, bigger than anything. You have to protect it. He thrust the small metal box into my hands, his fingers gripping mine with desperate strength. Promise me, Aurora. Promise me you'll keep it safe. His eyes, filled with a love that burned brighter than any fire, pleaded with me. I knew then, with a certainty that pierced my soul, that there was no other choice. I promise, I whispered, my voice choked with grief. He gave me a fleeting, heartbreaking smile. Go, my love. Go. He turned and faced our pursuers, drawing his own pistol, a small, insignificant thing against their superior firepower. He fired, and a single shot echoed through the tunnels. Then a volley of shots erupted, the sound deafening, brutal. I didn't see him fall. I couldn't. I turned and ran, the metal box clutched tightly in my hand, the weight of it a physical manifestation of the burden I now carried. I ran blindly, tears streaming down my face, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The tunnels blurred around me, a dizzying maze of stone and shadow. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to escape, that I had to protect what Elias had given me. I stumbled, fell, and scrambled back to my feet, driven by a primal instinct to survive. The sounds of the pursuit faded behind me, replaced by the hollow echo of my own footsteps and the suffocating weight of my grief. Finally, I reached an exit, a hidden passage that led out into the woods behind the church. I emerged into the cold night air, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. I collapsed against a tree, the metal box still clutched in my hand. The cold seeped into me, numbing my skin, but it couldn't touch the burning pain in my heart. Elias was gone. My love, my protector, my everything. He was gone, sacrificed to buy me time to ensure the safety of this thing. I looked down at the box in my hand, its faint internal light now seeming to mock me. What was it? What was so important that it was worth Elias's life? I didn't know. But I knew I had to find out. I had to honor his sacrifice, to fulfill the promise I had made. With trembling fingers I opened the diary, the familiar leather comforting against my skin. I uncapped my pen and began to write, pouring out my grief, my fear, my confusion onto the page. Elias is gone. They took him from me. He gave me this box. He said it was important, that I had to protect it. I don't understand. I don't know what to do. My heart is broken. I feel lost, alone. But I promised him. I promised I would keep it safe. I promised I would find out what it is, what it means. I will not let his sacrifice be in vain. I will not let them win. I will find the strength to carry on. For him. For us. Writing those words, putting them down on paper, was like building a small, fragile bridge across the chasm of my grief. It gave me something to hold on to, a purpose to cling to. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the woods, writing in the diary, letting the words flow from my pen like tears. I wrote about Elias, about his kindness, his courage, his unwavering love. I wrote about our dreams, our hopes for the future, now shattered and lost forever. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to move, to disappear, to protect the box and myself. I tucked the diary and the metal box into my bag, a newfound resolve hardening my gaze. I was no longer just Aurora. I was Aurora, carrying the weight of Elias's sacrifice, the legacy of his love, and the secret of the clockmaker's greatest invention. I walked away from the woods, away from the church, away from the memory of Elias. I walked into the unknown, into a future I never could have imagined, a future defined by loss, by purpose, and by the unwavering determination to keep the promise I had made. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to go. For Elias. For the future he had entrusted to me. And for the woman I was now becoming, a woman forged in the fires of grief, tempered by love, and driven by a purpose that burned brighter than any flame. The diary, my constant companion, became my anchor, my confidant, the silent witness to my journey, a journey that had just begun, a journey that would lead me to places I never dreamed possible, and force me to become a person I never knew I could be. It was a heavy burden, but I would carry it for Elias with every fiber of my being. The stone bit into my palms as I scrambled, each breath a ragged sob fighting its way out of my chest. The labyrinth, now a tomb, echoed behind me. I didn't look back. Elias wouldn't have wanted me to. Reaching the surface felt like being born again, only uglier. My clothes were torn, my skin scraped raw. The air, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, stung my lungs. The world was too bright, too loud. I stumbled, each step a protest from muscles pushed beyond their limit. Home. It was still standing. The porch light cast a yellow glow on the familiar swing set, now ghostly in the pre-dawn light. I pushed the door open, the creak of the hinges a scream in the silence. The house held its breath, waiting. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to see myself. I knew what I would find. A stranger in the mirror, haunted by what I had seen, what I had done, what I had lost. I went to my room, Elias's room now too. The bed was neatly made, his scent still clinging faintly to the pillow. I pressed my face into it, inhaling deeply, trying to pull him back from the void. He was gone. The artifact. I fumbled with my torn pocket, the cold metal a sharp reminder. I wrapped it in a silk scarf from my drawer, the vibrant colors a stark contrast to the dull ache in my heart. I hid it under the floorboards beneath a loose plank, a place only he and I knew. Sleep didn't come. The darkness was full of his laughter, his stories, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Then just as quickly the laughter turned to screams, the stories to silence, the smile to dust. The morning arrived like an unwelcome guest. Sunlight streamed through the window, mocking my grief. I could hear the familiar sounds of the house waking up, my daughter, Sarah, moving around downstairs, the kettle whistling. I couldn't face them. Not yet. I stayed in bed, pretending to be asleep when Sarah knocked. "Mom? Are you okay? You weren't at breakfast." "Just tired, dear." I managed, my voice hoarse. "Long night. I'll be down later." She didn't press. She knew I'd been grieving ever since Elias got sick. She couldn't possibly imagine the depth of my sorrow now, the secret I carried. Later I forced myself to get up, to wash, to dress. I avoided the mirror. The hollow-eyed woman staring back wasn't me. Downstairs the air was thick with concern. Sarah hovered, her husband, Tom, offered awkward pats on the back. My grandchildren, bless their hearts, were subdued, sensing the heavy atmosphere. "The police called," Sarah said gently. "They found Elias's car. It looks like he had an accident." An accident? The lie settled in my stomach like a stone. I swallowed it down. "Oh, Mom," Sarah said, reaching for me. "I'm so sorry." I let her hug me, let the tears flow. It wasn't a lie exactly. I was sorry. Sorry that Elias was gone, sorry for the truth I couldn't tell, sorry for the burden I now carried. The days that followed were a blur of condolences, casseroles, and hushed whispers. People meant well, but their words were like sandpaper against my raw skin. They spoke of closure, of moving on. They couldn't understand that my world had ended, not with a bang, but with a silent, agonizing sacrifice. I found myself drawn to Elias's things. His worn leather jacket, his collection of old maps, his dog-eared books. Each object a painful reminder of his absence, but also a connection, a lifeline. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I went to his room. The diary. It was on his desk, tucked beneath a pile of papers. I hadn't been able to bring myself to touch it since he left. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The leather was soft, worn smooth from years of use. I opened it carefully, the familiar scent of old paper and ink filling my nostrils. His handwriting. Bold, confident strokes that mirrored his personality. I flipped through the pages, my eyes blurring with tears. Most of it was the usual research notes, sketches, observations. But then I found it. A page filled with symbols, a language I didn't recognize. It was unlike anything else in the diary. Coded. My heart quickened. This wasn't just a diary. It was a map, a guide, a key to something important. I closed the diary, clutching it to my chest. Elias had left me a piece of himself, a piece of the puzzle. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I couldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. The grief was still there, a constant ache. But beneath it, something else was stirring. A flicker of purpose, a spark of resolve. I started small. I went to the library, to the dusty back section where the forgotten books lay. I spent hours poring over ancient texts, searching for clues, for anything that might shed light on the symbols in the diary. I felt like a ghost, haunting the aisles, lost in a world of forgotten knowledge. But with each new discovery, with each small piece of the puzzle I pieced together, I felt a little less lost, a little more connected to Elias. I started sleeping less, eating less. My family noticed, of course. They worried. They urged me to rest, to take care of myself. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. One night, Sarah found me in Elias's room, surrounded by books and maps. "Mom," she said, her voice laced with concern, "you need to take a break. This isn't healthy." I looked up at her, my eyes burning with fatigue. "I know, dear," I said softly, "but I have to do this. For Elias." She didn't understand, not really. But she saw the determination in my eyes, the fire that had been rekindled in my soul. And she knew somehow that she couldn't stop me. I was no longer just a grieving widow. I was a protector, a guardian of a secret that could change the world. And I would do whatever it took to honor Elias's memory, to fulfill his purpose. The weight of the artifact beneath the floorboards felt heavier now. Not just a burden, but a responsibility. The silence in the house wasn't just emptiness, but a space to be filled with the echo of his courage and the quiet strength of my resolve. The world wouldn't know what I was doing. They would see a grieving old woman slowly fading away. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. And I was ready to face it. Grandma's voice, warm and a little wistful. "They tried to put Grandma in a nursing home, you say? Well, darlings, life has a funny way of repeating itself, doesn't it? Back then it was the Nazis trying to put me in a box of fear and silence. But just like a stubborn old woman with a mischievous glint in her eye, I had other plans. Leaving Willow Creek felt like tearing a piece of myself away. Every cobblestone, every whispering willow, held a memory of Elias, of our stolen moments of joy amidst the encroaching darkness. But I knew I couldn't stay. The artifact, Elias's legacy, needed protecting, and I needed to learn how to protect it. Willow Creek, with its familiar faces and comforting routines, had become a gilded cage, a place where I was too easily found. So, with a heavy heart and a small worn suitcase containing Elias's diary, his notes, and the enigmatic artifact nestled amongst my meager belongings, I boarded a bus bound for the city. It wasn't a grand city, mind you, not like New York or Paris. It was a sprawling, anonymous place, full of hurried footsteps and faces that never lingered. Perfect for disappearing. My new home was a small, sparsely furnished room above a bakery. The aroma of freshly baked bread was a constant comfort, a small reminder of normalcy in a world that felt increasingly surreal. The walls were thin, and I could hear the muffled conversations of my neighbors, the clatter of dishes, the mournful strains of a violin played late into the night. I felt a pang of loneliness, a deep ache for the warmth of Elias's presence, for the familiar comfort of home. But I knew I wasn't alone, not really. I had a purpose, a mission. My days quickly settled into a rhythm of relentless study. Elias's diary became my Bible, his cryptic notes my Rosetta Stone. I spent hours in the hushed halls of the city library, poring over books on cryptography, history, and languages. The Dewey Decimal System became my new best friend, and the scent of old paper and ink a familiar solace. I felt like a sponge, soaking up every bit of knowledge I could find. The artifact, it was more than just an encryption device, I slowly realized. It was a key to unlocking secrets, to understanding the enemy's plans. Elias had hinted at its true potential, calling it a thinking machine, a mirror reflecting the darkness. He believed it could anticipate moves, decipher hidden meanings, reveal the truth buried beneath layers of deception. But understanding its potential was one thing, harnessing it was another. The artifact hummed with a strange energy, a silent power that both fascinated and intimidated me. It responded to patterns, to logic, to intuition. It was like learning a new language, a language of symbols and sequences, of subtle shifts and hidden connections. I sought out discreet consultations with academics, historians, anyone who might shed light on Elias's research. I learned to ask the right questions, to listen carefully, to glean information without revealing too much about myself. I learned the art of blending in, of becoming invisible in a crowd. I observed people, their gestures, their expressions, their subtle interactions. I learned to read between the lines, to see what wasn't being said. My transformation wasn't just intellectual. It was physical, emotional. I learned to move silently, to be aware of my surroundings, to anticipate danger. I practiced observation, memorizing faces, noticing details that others missed. I learned to trust my instincts, to listen to that small voice inside that whispered warnings. I became in essence a self-taught spy. One evening while sitting in a crowded cafe, ostensibly reading a newspaper, I overheard a conversation that sent a chill down my spine. Two men, speaking in hushed tones, were discussing a package that needed to be delivered to a certain Herr Schmidt. The name Schmidt. It resonated with a deep primal fear. It was a name I had seen in Elias's diary, a name associated with the Nazi organization that was relentlessly pursuing him. My heart pounded in my chest. I pretended to be absorbed in my newspaper, but my senses were on high alert. I memorized their faces, their clothes, their mannerisms. I even managed to discreetly jot down the license plate number of their car on a napkin. That night I worked tirelessly, using the artifact to decipher a series of coded messages I had intercepted during my research. The artifact hummed and vibrated in my hands, its intricate mechanisms whirring softly. Slowly, painstakingly, the message began to unravel, revealing a plot to infiltrate a local resistance group. I knew I had to warn them, but how? I couldn't risk revealing myself, or the artifact. I had to find a way to deliver the information anonymously, to protect the innocent without exposing myself to danger. I devised a plan, a carefully orchestrated sequence of events that would lead the resistance fighters to the truth without revealing my involvement. It was a risky gamble, but I had no choice. Lives were at stake. The next day, I placed a coded message, disguised as a newspaper advertisement, in a prominent location. I then left a series of anonymous phone calls, subtly guiding the resistance leaders towards the truth. It was a delicate dance, a tightrope walk between danger and salvation. For days I lived on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. I knew they were out there searching for me, for the artifact. I saw them in the shadows, in the fleeting glances of strangers, in the suspicious movements of unmarked cars. One afternoon, while walking home from the library, I noticed a man following me. He was tall and imposing with a cold, calculating gaze. He wore a dark coat and a fedora, pulled low over his eyes. He was the epitome of menace. My heart leaped into my throat. I tried to remain calm, to appear nonchalant. I quickened my pace, weaving through the crowded streets, trying to lose him in the throng. But he was relentless, always just a few steps behind. I ducked into a small, dimly lit alleyway, hoping to create some distance. But he followed me in, his footsteps echoing ominously in the narrow space. I knew I was trapped. He approached me slowly, his eyes fixed on mine. "Aurora," he said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "We've been looking for you." My blood ran cold. He knew my name. He knew who I was. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He smiled, a cruel, mirthless smile. "Don't play coy with me, Aurora. We know about the artifact. We know about Elias. And we know you have it." He reached out to grab me, but I was ready. I had been preparing for this moment, honing my reflexes, anticipating his every move. I sidestepped his grasp and delivered a swift, sharp kick to his shin. He cried out in pain, momentarily stunned. I seized the opportunity and fled, running as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back. I knew he would be coming after me, but I had to keep moving, to keep running, to protect the artifact and Elias's legacy. That night, I packed my meager belongings and left the city. I couldn't stay there any longer. It was too dangerous. I had to find a new hiding place, a new identity, a new way to survive. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril. But I was no longer the naive, grieving girl who had left Willow Creek. I had learned, I had adapted, I had grown stronger. I was a survivor, a guardian of secrets, a warrior in a silent war. And I would not be put in a box, not by anyone. Not even the Nazis. Grandma sighs softly, a hint of steel in her voice. They underestimated me, you see. They thought I was just a frail old woman, easily manipulated, easily controlled. But they didn't know what I was capable of. They didn't know the strength that lay hidden beneath my quiet demeanor. They didn't know that I was carrying a legacy, a secret that could change the course of history. And I would do whatever it took to protect it. Whatever it took. "Here, child, let me pull up this old shawl." The evenings grow cooler now, don't they? It reminds me of the nights during the war. Always a chill in the air, even in summer. Not just the weather, mind you. A chill of fear, of uncertainty that settled deep in your bones. You've read about Aurora's work, haven't you? Her diary. Elias's gift. That little artifact tucked away in its music box became her lifeline. And in a way, a lifeline for so many others. It wasn't about grand battles or daring raids, not in the way you see in those war movies. It was about whispers in the dark, coded messages flickering across continents, the subtle shift of tides that turned the course of the war. Aurora, my dear, she wasn't a soldier. She was a quiet, unassuming woman, but within her burned a fierce loyalty and a love so profound it could move mountains. And that love, channeled through Elias's invention, became a weapon. I remember her telling me years later about one particular instance. The Allies were planning a major offensive, but the enemy had somehow gotten wind of it. Aurora, using the artifact, intercepted a string of coded messages, revealing the enemy's ambush points. It was like threading a needle in the dark, she said. Each message a tiny piece of a puzzle, and the fate of so many soldiers hung on her ability to assemble it correctly. She worked for days, fueled by coffee and fear, her fingers flying across the dials, the music box humming its melancholic tune. A constant, haunting reminder of what she had lost, and what she was fighting to protect. The information she gleaned saved countless lives. The offensive was a success not because of brute force but because of knowledge, of foresight. And Aurora, hidden away in her little room, had been the key. There were other times, of course. Times when the messages were garbled, the connections weak, and the pressure unbearable. Times when she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, the faces of those she was trying to protect swimming before her eyes. But she never gave up. She couldn't. Not for Elias, not for her country, not for the future she desperately hoped to see. Then one day the news came. The war was over. I can't describe the feeling, child. It wasn't just joy, although there was that, a profound, almost unbearable joy. It was relief, exhaustion, a sense of disbelief that something so terrible could finally be over. Aurora said it was like waking up from a nightmare, only to find that the world was still there, scarred but alive. The celebrations erupted, of course. People dancing in the streets, bells ringing, flags waving. But for Aurora, the victory was quieter, more personal. She stood by the window watching the fireworks light up the night sky, the music box playing softly beside her. The war was over, but the memories, the sacrifices, the love she had shared with Elias would remain. The world expected her to return to normal, to pick up the pieces of her life and move on. But how could she? The war had changed her, forged her in the fires of sacrifice and loss. She couldn't simply go back to being the woman she once was. So she chose a different path. She left the city, the memories too heavy, and returned to Willow Creek, the place where she had first met Elias. It was a small, quiet town, nestled in the hills, far removed from the horrors of the war. And it was there, surrounded by the gentle beauty of nature, that she began to heal. She didn't forget the war, of course. She never could. But she chose to focus on the future, on building something new from the ashes of the past. She started a small schoolhouse, teaching the children of the town, sharing her knowledge and her love of learning. She volunteered at the local hospital, tending to the wounded and the sick. She became a pillar of the community, a source of strength and comfort for those who had suffered. The artifact, Elias's gift, remained with her. She kept it tucked away inside the music box, a silent testament to their love, to their sacrifice. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a reminder, a symbol of hope, of the enduring power of the human spirit. And slowly over time Aurora transformed. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by a gentle serenity. The lines of worry etched on her face softened, replaced by a quiet wisdom. She became the woman you knew, child. The woman I knew. Grandma Aurora. She never spoke much about the war, not directly. But you could see it in her eyes, in the way she held herself, in the depth of her compassion. She carried the weight of the past with grace and dignity, never allowing it to define her, but always allowing it to inform her. She taught me so much, child. About love, about loss, about the importance of kindness and forgiveness. She showed me that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. That even after the greatest of tragedies, Life can still be beautiful. Looking back now, I understand. The diary wasn't just a record of her wartime experiences. It was a testament to her strength, her resilience, her unwavering love. It was a glimpse into the soul of a woman who had sacrificed everything for her country, for her love, for the future. And the music box? It wasn't just a container for the artifact. It was a symbol of her heart, filled with memories, with love, with hope. It played a melancholic tune, yes, but it was also a tune of triumph, of resilience, of enduring love. She never wanted to be seen as a hero, you know. She always said she was just doing what she had to do. But to me, she was a hero. A quiet, unassuming hero, who changed the world in her own small way. And now, child, it's getting late. The stars are coming out just like they did on those nights during the war. Let me tuck you in and I'll tell you another story tomorrow. A story about hope, about love, about the enduring power of the human spirit. Because those are the stories that matter, aren't they? The stories that remind us that even in the darkest of times, there is always light. And Aurora, my dear Aurora, she was a beacon of that light. She always will be. The worn leather of the diary felt cool beneath my fingertips, a comforting weight against the tremor that still lingered in my hands. It had been weeks since I discovered its hidden compartment, weeks since Aurora's secrets had spilled onto the pages, rewriting everything I thought I knew about her, about us. The initial shock had subsided, replaced by a quiet, persistent ache of understanding. I sat now in the sun-drenched room, the very room they had deemed unsuitable for her, the room she had quietly defended with her wit and her will. The scent of lavender stubbornly clinging to the air despite the open windows was a constant reminder of her presence, a silent echo of her laughter. I opened the diary again, not searching for more secrets, but simply wanting to be close to her voice. I ran my fingers over the faded ink, tracing the loops and swirls of her handwriting, each stroke a testament to a life lived with a quiet ferocity. It wasn't just a record of events. It was a map of her soul, a landscape of love and loss, of dreams nurtured and sacrifices made. Before, I had seen her as just Grandma, the woman who baked the best apple pies, who told fantastical stories of mischievous fairies and brave knights, who always had a warm hug and a comforting word. But now the stories were different. They resonated with a deeper meaning, a hidden layer of truth I hadn't been able to perceive before. The mischievous fairies, I realized, were her own acts of rebellion, her small, quiet victories against a world that tried to confine her. The brave knights were the moments she stood up for herself, for her family, for the things she believed in, even when it meant facing overwhelming odds. The story of the princess locked in a tower, waiting for a prince to rescue her, had always been my favorite. I remember her telling it with such dramatic flair, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Now I understood. The princess wasn't waiting for rescue. She was building her own escape route, brick by painstaking brick. Aurora wasn't locked in a tower. She was building a life, a haven, for herself and for those she loved, despite the constraints imposed upon her. The prince never came, but she rescued herself, over and over again, with her resilience, her intelligence, and her unwavering love. Her legacy wasn't in the hidden compartment, or the antique jewelry, or any material thing. It was in the quiet strength she possessed, the wisdom she shared through her stories, the unconditional love she poured into our lives. It was in the way she made us feel seen, heard, and valued, even when we were at our most vulnerable. It was in the lessons she taught us, not through lectures or sermons, but through the simple act of living her life with grace and courage. I remember her hands, gnarled and worn with age, but still capable of kneading dough with the precision of a master baker, of tending her garden with the gentle touch of a loving mother, of holding me close when I was scared or sad. Those hands, I now understood, had built a life, a legacy, a world of love and warmth that had sheltered us all. They had faced hardships and challenges, but they had never faltered, never stopped working, never stopped loving. I thought of the day they had suggested a nursing home, the sterile environment, the forced routines, the absence of everything that made her life meaningful. It was a well-intentioned suggestion, I knew, born out of concern and a desire to provide the best possible care. But it was also a profound misunderstanding of who she was, of what she needed. They saw her as frail, as dependent, as someone who needed to be managed and controlled. They didn't see the fire in her eyes, the strength in her spirit, the unwavering will to live life on her own terms. She had outsmarted them, not with grand schemes or dramatic pronouncements, but with quiet dignity and unwavering resolve. She had shown them, and perhaps more importantly, she had shown me, that age is not a measure of worth, that independence is not defined by physical ability, and that the most profound acts of resistance are often the quietest. As I sat there, bathed in the warm afternoon light, I realized that her story wasn't just about her. It was about all of us, about the hidden lives we all lead, the struggles we all face, the sacrifices we all make. It was about the importance of remembering, of honoring, of sharing our stories, so that future generations can learn from our experiences, can draw strength from our resilience, and can find hope in our love. I thought of my own life, the challenges I was facing, the doubts I was struggling with. I had always seen myself as strong, as independent, as capable. But lately I had been feeling lost, adrift, unsure of my path. I had allowed the pressures of the world to weigh me down, to dim my spirit, to silence my voice. But Aurora's story had rekindled something within me. It had reminded me that I was stronger than I thought, that I was capable of overcoming any obstacle, that I had a voice that deserved to be heard. It had reminded me that I was part of a lineage of strong, courageous women who had faced adversity with grace and resilience, and that I had a responsibility to carry on their legacy. The diary was more than just a collection of words. It was a lifeline, a connection to the past, a guide for the future. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always love, always the possibility of a new beginning. I closed the diary, holding it close to my heart. The lavender scent seemed to intensify, filling the room with a sense of peace and comfort. I knew that Aurora was gone, but her spirit lived on, in the stories she had told, in the lessons she had taught, in the love she had shared. And I knew that as long as I carried her story with me, I would never truly be alone. I stood up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and clarity. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the room. I walked to the window, gazing out at the garden, where the roses were blooming in vibrant hues of red and pink and yellow. Aurora had loved her roses, had tended them with such care and attention. They were a symbol of her life, of her beauty, of her enduring spirit. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the fresh, fragrant air. The world felt different somehow, brighter, clearer, more full of possibility. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks along the way. But I also knew that I was not alone, that I had the strength and the courage to face whatever came my way. Because I had Aurora's story, and that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all. My dears, as the sun sets on Grandma Aurora's story, let's hold close the warmth of her spirit, the unwavering courage she displayed, and the quiet revolution she sparked with nothing but love and a well-hidden diary. This wasn't just about avoiding a nursing home. It was about claiming ownership of her narrative, refusing to be defined by expectations, and choosing life, vibrant and full, on her own terms. It was about recognizing that even in the twilight years, we possess an inner strength, a wellspring of resilience that can surprise even ourselves. Aurora's life wasn't a fairy tale untouched by sorrow. It was a mosaic of joys and hardships, triumphs and quiet defeats, all woven together with the golden thread of love. She faced loss, endured disappointments, and carried burdens that would have crushed a lesser soul. Yet she never allowed bitterness to take root. Instead, she cultivated a garden of grace within her heart, a garden where empathy bloomed, forgiveness thrived, and hope remained a constant companion. The diary, you see, wasn't just a collection of memories. It was a testament to her unwavering belief in the power of connection, the importance of kindness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. It was a roadmap of her heart, revealing the contours of her love, the depths of her compassion, and the unwavering commitment she held to those she cherished. Each entry was a brushstroke, painting a portrait of a life lived fully, authentically, and with an unwavering dedication to creating beauty in the world, even in the face of ugliness. She showed us that age is not a cage but a stage where we can rewrite the script, challenge the conventions, and dance to the rhythm of our own hearts. She proved that wisdom isn't just accumulated knowledge, but the ability to see the world through the lens of compassion, to understand the complexities of the human condition, and to offer a helping hand to those who stumble along the way. And that love, oh, that boundless, overflowing love. It permeated every aspect of her being, radiating outwards and touching the lives of everyone she encountered. It was the fuel that powered her engine, the compass that guided her path, and the shield that protected her from the storms of life. She loved fiercely without reservation, and with a depth that transcended words. She loved her family, her friends, her community, and even strangers she met along the way. She understood that love is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of healing wounds, bridging divides, and transforming the world, one small act of kindness at a time. If Aurora's story resonated within you, if it stirred something deep in your soul, then it has served its purpose. It means that her spirit, her courage, her love continue to live on, not just in the pages of a diary, but in the hearts of those who have heard her tale. Stories like hers are not meant to be confined to the past. They are meant to be shared, to be cherished, to be passed down from generation to generation, reminding us of the power we each hold to make a difference in the world. Remember the mischievous glint in her eye when she outsmarted the well-meaning, yet misguided, attempts to confine her? Remember the quiet dignity with which she faced her challenges, the unwavering faith she held in the goodness of humanity, and the sheer joy she found in the simple pleasures of life? These are the qualities that defined her, the qualities that made her so special, and the qualities that we can all strive to emulate in our own lives. Aurora's story is a reminder that we are all authors of our own lives. We have the power to choose how we respond to the challenges we face, the power to define our own narratives, and the power to create lives filled with meaning, purpose, and joy. We don't have to be extraordinary to make a difference. We don't have to be wealthy or famous or powerful. All we need is a kind heart, a compassionate spirit, and a willingness to stand up for what we believe in. Think about the moments in her life that truly shone, the laughter shared with loved ones, the quiet acts of kindness extended to strangers, the unwavering support she offered to those in need. These were the moments that defined her, the moments that gave her life meaning, and the moments that will continue to inspire us long after she is gone. And so, my dears, I ask you, if Aurora's spirit touched your heart today, if her resilience inspired you, please leave a like. It's a small gesture, but it tells us that her story resonated, that her voice was heard, and that her legacy lives on. And if you yearn for more stories like this, stories that celebrate the human spirit, stories that remind us of the power of love and connection, please subscribe to our channel. We are committed to bringing you more tales of courage, compassion, and resilience, stories that will warm your heart, challenge your perspectives, and inspire you to live your own life to the fullest. We believe that everyone has a story to tell, and we are honored to be a part of sharing those stories with the world. We are grateful for your support, your engagement, and your willingness to listen. It is through these shared experiences that we connect with one another, that we learn from one another, and that we create a more compassionate and understanding world. Now, as the final page of Aurora's diary turns, I want to ask you a question that has been swirling in my own mind since I first began to share her story with you. What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? Was it the secret to her resilience? The secret to her unwavering love? Or perhaps the secret to finding joy in the face of adversity? Share your thoughts below in the comments. We are eager to hear your interpretations, your reflections, and your own personal connections to Aurora's story. Your insights are valuable, your perspectives are unique, and your voices matter. Let us create a space for meaningful dialogue, a space where we can learn from one another, support one another, and inspire one another to live lives filled with purpose, passion, and joy. Imagine for a moment that you could step into Aurora's shoes, that you could experience the world through her eyes, that you could feel the warmth of her love radiating outwards. What would you do differently? What choices would you make? What legacy would you leave behind? These are the questions that Aurora's story invites us to consider, the questions that challenge us to examine our own lives, and the questions that inspire us to become the best versions of ourselves. Think about the people in your own life who have inspired you, who have challenged you, and who have loved you unconditionally. What lessons have they taught you? What qualities do you admire in them? And how can you carry their legacy forward in your own life? Aurora's story is not just about the past. It is about the present and the future. It is about the choices we make each and every day, the actions we take to make a difference in the world, and the legacy we leave behind for future generations. So let us honor Aurora's memory by living lives filled with courage, compassion, and love. Let us embrace the challenges that come our way with grace and resilience. Let us choose kindness over judgment, empathy over apathy, and hope over despair. And let us never forget the power of a well-hidden diary to reveal the truths that lie within our hearts. Before I go, I want to share one final image, one final memory that encapsulates the essence of Aurora's spirit. Picture her sitting on her porch swing, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, a gentle smile gracing her lips and a twinkle in her eye. She is surrounded by her loved ones, sharing stories, laughing together, and creating memories that will last a lifetime. This is the image of a life well lived, a life filled with love, purpose, and joy. And this is the legacy that Aurora has left behind for us all. Thank you for joining me on this journey, for listening to Aurora's story, and for allowing her spirit to touch your hearts. May her memory be a blessing, and may her legacy inspire us all to live lives filled with courage, compassion, and love. And remember, my dears, never underestimate the power of a grandmother with a secret and a well-hidden diary. They might just change the world.